Hello, and welcome to another program of healing the soul through the key. The key is this book that I wrote, and this book is available on Amazon. It will give you an absolutely amazing result, this book, because you're going to find out how people get into situations of emotional woundedness, how they end up with problems in their relationships, all kinds of things. But this book will bless you, absolutely. And you can get it on Amazon, like I said. You also can come to my website, which is joystones.org. And when you come to joystones.org, you're going to find there's over 40 different videos on the website, all kinds of different subjects. That'll bless you. I'm sure that'll bless you. And then if you want to get in touch with me, you can press the Want Help button, and it will take you to a section where you can write down what you want help for. I'm here to help you. This is why I do this show. This is why I do this program, is so that you can receive information that will help you become more the person that God created you to be. See, we've got to be before we do. And most people are doing before they're being. Most people are actually trying to do in order to please God, because that's what they had to do in order to please their parents. That was to get the attention of their parents. And God showed me that recently. And so I'm passing it on to you. Now, last week we talked about fear and shame. Fear and shame come from pain. Because when a person has had, over time, way too much pain, what ends up happening is they end up having shame, but they're also afraid of having that kind of pain again. Remember the wheel that we talked about a while ago? It's in the book in chapter 3, by the way. That wheel diagram, they live on the rim, and you're probably living on the rim, because on the rim, people are afraid of losing control. People are afraid of not knowing what the next thing's going to happen. People are afraid of more pain. Well, if you're afraid of more pain, and most people are, it's below conscious thought, by the way, so there's not much you can do about it until it comes into your consciousness. But what happens is that fear of more pain keeps people stuck, living below what God promised, and particularly Jesus promised in John 10:10, the abundant life. So most Christians are not living the abundant life because they're a fear of more pain, and it keeps them stuck. But if you have pain over time, as I said, what happens is that pain will actually morph or change into shame. And shame is very dangerous when it's toxic. And I talked about this last week, that toxic shame actually is not a belief that I did something bad. It's a belief that I am bad. I'm bad. To my core, I believe that I'm bad. And that's what happened to me, and I explained that to you, that I believed I was defective, and I believed that I was not valuable, not important, not worthy, and I hated myself because my father treated me like he hated me. So I was shame-based. My father was shame-based. I said last week that if you are raised by parents that are shame-based, you're going to be shame-based. Now, what's the antidote to fear? The antidote to fear is love. If you are loved enough, then you will be able to trust. And if you can trust, then you won't be afraid. You'll live in faith. And it's without faith. If we don't have faith, we can't please God. So the pleasing of God is not by doing, it's by having faith. But that's something that will happen when you have love, when you have enough love. And we're going to get into that a little bit today, a little bit next week, and then we'll get into the real essence of it in 3 weeks from now. So just wanted to let you know that shame is the antidote to shame is you bringing it into the light, talking about it. According to James 5:16, which says, confess your faults one to another and pray that you might be healed. So that's the antidote to shame, talking about it. Today, we're going to talk about how God designed our brain. And each of you is going to learn a lot today about the brain and how the brain functions, how your brain functions, why it causes you many problems. And so we're going to talk about that today, and it's going to be very, very helpful to you. The brain really is two hemispheres. There's a right side and a left side. I'll get that straight. Right side and left side. And what happens is that the right side of your brain is designed by God to receive experiences. All different kinds of experiences come through the right side of our brain. And they are actually put in files, so to speak. Not really, but put in files. Let's keep it simple. Put in files, and those files are in our right side of our brain. Anytime we experience anything in our present life, it will always go back and look through the files to see, have I experienced this before? The left side of our brain always comes up with explanations, interpretations, judgments, and assumptions. Now, that is a very, very important part of our brain because our brain must come up with explanations. Explanations about what, you say? Well, explanations about the event that we just experienced. And so that's the way the left side and the right side work. Now, they need to be in agreement. The left side and right side need to be in agreement. If they're not, there's going to be disharmony and there's going to be a problem. And that's not going to work out well. So what we need to look at is, okay, the left side makes explanations, the right side has experiences. Now, when the right side looks through the files to see if there is any time that what I've experienced in the present I've experienced in the past, it'll pull that file and it'll bring that file forward into our brain in nanoseconds. That's a billionth of a second, folks, and that is very, very fast. I mean, it's like lightning fast. And so what happens is that our brain will bring into the present what we are experiencing in the present will come from the past if we've experienced it before, or brain scientists tell us if we've experienced anything that's remotely similar to what we experienced in the past, it will come forward into our consciousness with the same pain of the event and the same belief about the event. Now, what's this belief about the event? Well, here's the situation that I believe may have happened. I can't prove it because the Bible doesn't tell us, but let's look at it. Let's look at what I think and what I believe happened because it makes a lot of sense. What I believe happened when Adam and Eve were in the garden was that Adam and Eve in Genesis 2:25 were naked, they were not ashamed. That means they could know no evil. It also means something very interesting. Every experience they had was their truth. What do I mean by that? It was their reality. Every experience they had could not be changed by anything other, any other input. There was no fear, no shame, no pain, no nothing. If they were naked, they weren't ashamed. So they didn't even know they were naked. And so what happened is that their experience could be their truth or their reality. Now, Satan said to the woman, When you eat this apple, you'll be like God, knowing good and evil. Well, what does that mean? Well, they ate the apple, disobeyed, and then they knew they were naked, they had shame, and they were in fear of God. Remember, God was walking in the cool of the day, and Adam wasn't around, and he said, "Where are you?" And he said, "Well, I was naked, I was ashamed, and I hid." People that are naked and shamed by what happened to them as children and the pain they felt will hide, and they will be fearful. So what happened to Adam and Eve? What I believe happened to Adam and Eve, and it's really seen by the result of what Satan said to the woman. You're going to know differently. Well, how are you going to know differently? Well, I believe what happened is that when they disobeyed God, their 5 physical senses were switched on. Their 5 physical senses were switched on. Now, what that means is they now knew everything by taste, touch, smell, hearing, and sight. What that means is that came in to the left side of their brain was this new thing of knowing by their 5 physical senses. Now, what that meant was that remember, Satan said, you're going to know good and evil. Well, every time there's an explanation, it's got to go through the knowledge of good and evil. Every time there's an interpretation of an event that we have, it got to go through the knowledge of good and evil. So what happens then is we end up in a situation where everything we experience goes through the knowledge of good and evil. The explanation defaults to the knowledge of good and evil like a computer defaults. And what happens is that explanation becomes false. The interpretation becomes a misinterpretation. It's not accurate. The assumption, it becomes not accurate. It's a false assumption. And the judgment is a faulty judgment. Well, doesn't that explain why Jesus said, don't judge? Because you are going to be having a false judgment. Well, what this means then is Satan saw that they were afraid. They were naked, they were shamed, and they were afraid. So fear entered when they disobeyed. And so Satan, being the father of lies, you might wonder, how does he plant those lies? Well, here's how he plants the lies. He causes parents to trigger because of what they believe that's not true. See, the way God designed our brains is if something we experience is not true, then it will not line up with the new experience that we're having in the present. So what happens is, when it's remotely similar, what we're experiencing in the present is remotely similar to what we experienced in the past, what will happen is we'll have a faulty explanation about what we experienced. Remember when I talked to you last week about me eating peas? And I spit them out, my dad slapped my hand and he yelled at me. Well, the explanation was that I was bad. Not that I did something bad, but that I was bad. Is that true? No, it's not true, but it's my truth, it's my belief. And so when I experience something that's remotely similar to that, that's going to cause a disconnect or a disharmony in my brain. It's going to cause an emotional upset. It's going to cause an emotional trigger. And what's going to happen is that my left side of my brain, when the pain from the event that we experienced in childhood and the faulty belief that we experienced that came in to explain the painful event comes forward into my brain, it shuts the left side of my brain down. Now I'm going to react Because see, God knew this. He knew that if the left side of my brain was overwhelmed, the disharmony between the right side and the left side, the explanation not fitting, not being truthful, not fitting the right side experience, that he designed our brains so that the left side shuts down to conserve energy. And we've got to survive. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into flight, fight, or freeze. Fight, flight, or freeze. That's going to be the reaction that we have. And so what happens is because we have no more logic, there's no logic now in the left side of our brain. So you may have heard somebody say, if they yelled and screamed, I lost my mind. Well, they did. They lost their logical part of their mind. And what happens is then that part goes down, the prefrontal cortex takes over, and what happens is we will fight. I fought because, but I always fought somebody that I could, be bullying. I fought with my words. I didn't fight with my fists. Some people fight with their fists. I wasn't one that could do that. I was smarter than that. I fought with my words, but I yelled and screamed at people that were weaker than I was. Some people freeze. They just freeze. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to say because that's what happened to them when they were children. They couldn't fight because they would be further hurt, I guess would be the best way to say it, further hurt by what happened with their father or mother or a person in authority. What happened then is that they freeze. Other people leave. They just leave. I've had, number of people. I was married to a woman who is now in heaven, but she would actually shut down and she would freeze, and she would go to bed for a couple of weeks, and it was very, very difficult. What happens with some people is they leave. They just get out of there as fast as they can. But the result is always one of survival. That's what people are doing when they fight, or freeze. And by the way, the reaction that you have when the brain, when we're experiencing something in the present that's remotely similar to the past, and it brings all that intense emotion and pain forward and shuts down the left side of the brain, that's below conscious thought until it happens. You can't control that result. You can't. You can't control that result. And that's a very big thing for you to know, because it will help you to understand why when your wife does something or your husband does something, your brain shuts down. You start getting angry, or you start freezing, or you start, wanting to get away. Why? Well, what you experienced in childhood is now coming into your brain in nanoseconds. You'd swear that your husband was doing that or your spouse was doing that intentionally. It's not true, but it feels like it's true. And Satan loves that, because then you think that's how fights start, that's how problems start. That's why there's divorce. Can't get along. Why? Because they're being triggered. Now, here's the situation. When that false explanation is in the left side of the brain, what happens is that we believe things about ourselves that aren't true. And when we believe things about ourselves that aren't true, we are going to live on the rim. Remember, I talked about the wheel. And there's an inner hub and an outer rim. Well, people live on the rim that are afraid. Afraid of what? More pain. Remember, I said Satan uses pain. Why does he use pain? Because he knows that he can plant lies or false beliefs in children who can't reason. That's why he does it with children, and then he reinforces it all the way. And even in adulthood, people can't control their emotions. And so that's what keeps people stuck on the rim, okay? You don't want to be on the rim because that's not where the abundant life is. But Satan knows that if he can bring a child pain through a parent, that child will not trust their parent. And if they don't trust their parent, they're not going to be able to trust authority. And if they can't trust authority, they won't be able to trust teachers and other people in authority. And what will happen is they will not be able to trust God. Well, if you can't trust God, that's a problem when your purpose for being here on earth is really given to you by the one you can't trust. That's not a good situation. That's not a good situation at all. So, we've got a problem. And the problem is every single human being on the face of the earth is believing things about themselves that aren't true. They're believing they're not valuable, not important, not worthy. They're believing that they are defective, like I believed. Some of them are even hating themselves. And they are afraid. And they're living in fear. And it's a very, very debilitating way to live. And it's not going to produce the abundant life that Jesus promised in 10:10. That's the problem. And it's a problem because of how God designed our brains. We lack knowledge, and that lack of knowledge is keeping the body of Christ, I believe, impotent, really not able to do what they are called to do, and it causes people to have problems, great big problems in relationship. In all their relationship. I'm not just talking about marriage. I'm talking about parents and children. I'm talking about people that in their in-laws, outlaws, whatever you want to call them. I'm talking about people in their work situations. Why? Because if something happens at work that's remotely similar to what I experienced as a child, then what's going to happen? I'm going to have an emotional upset. My brain is going to shut down, and I'm going to do fight, flight, or freeze. Okay? Well, you don't want to fight your boss. That's not a good idea. You don't want to run away from your boss or a meeting. You don't want to just freeze and not be able to communicate. But that's what happens. All this is below conscious thought. Now, what the key to this is that God designed our brains in such a way as that when the brain, the faulty explanation doesn't line up with the new experience, what happens is the brain goes into shutdown. So that is below conscious thought. You can't willpower yourself to trust God if you have not had enough new experiences. What do I mean by that? Well, here's what brain scientists tell us. You cannot change a false explanation or a faulty belief or a lie without a new truthful experience. You must have a new truthful experience, because what we believe in the left side of our brain, the explanations and beliefs, actually cause us to live life a certain way on the rim. Remember, on the rim. So what we have to do is we have to understand how God designed our brains, because once we understand this, then we can go and we can start to begin to find out what is the solution to false beliefs. Why am I living in the Christian life the best I can? It's not working well. My life is just not working. My relationships are hard. Everything's hard. Well, especially today, because you can't know, when you live on the rim, you fear loss of control, Well, a lot of people are not in control with the events of happening in our world today. A lot of people they don't have predictability. See, when you live on the rim, you want predictability and certainty. Well, where's the certainty today? Where's the certainty for people that are living in the rim in today's world? It's just not there. It's not available because our world is chaotic. Our world is upside down. It's all over the place. So we've got a problem. And the problem is not understanding how God designed our brains. I believe it's one of the biggest problems in the body of Christ because everyone believes things about themselves that aren't true. And so what we need to know is, how does God heal, or how does he show us how to heal false beliefs, misinterpretations, false judgments, inaccurate assumptions? How do we heal those? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about in next week. We're going to be talking about how God showed me in Revelation, because of the understanding of how the brain works. According to the brain scientists, I've been studying how the brain works and why people do what they do for years and years, over 20, 25 years. Why? Well, first of all, I needed to find out for myself, but then I wanted to find out for you. I found out for myself, my life is totally different, and I found out I can share this with you and it'll be a blessing. So next week, we're going to talk about how we change false beliefs. And you can't do it with willpower. You've got to do it through Jesus. And if you don't know Jesus, there's going to be a real good reason to know Jesus and accept him as your Lord and Savior, because he's the one who changes false beliefs. He's the only one who can go back in space and time and change the interpretation, change the way we believe. And you can't do it. Other people can't do it. I only know Jesus can do it, and he does it very well. And guess what? He does it permanently. And when he does it permanently, your life is going to change. It's going to get better. You're going to get off the rim, and you're going to have a great life, and God is going to bless you in that life